Hi, everybody, and thank you for dialing in to this week's podcast. We have something very, very interesting for your eyes and for your ears this afternoon. I am delighted to welcome and introduce Lea Lea-Weston, who is the founder of a really, really interesting organization that I know you're going to really enjoy learning about today. That's called Talking Heads Supervision. Lea, welcome to the Education Showrooms podcast. How's things going?
Hi, Matt. Thank you very much for having me. I'm sat here in very rainy Devon. But apart from
Yes,
that, it's great.
good stuff. And it'd be lovely just to learn a little bit about you. The audience are always really, really keen to learn about our special guests, your background, your expertise. We'll start there. So we'd love to learn about Lea. There's a strapline for you. Let's learn about Lea. There you go.
Thank you very much. There are many of us. Um, I am a state registered drama therapist of 26 years. So I've always worked with children and young people. I was going to train to be a teacher 30 years ago, but I realised that I'd always want to follow the young people out of the classroom and spend time with them. So that is what I've spent my time doing. For 20 years, I've been a supervisor. I did have a sojourn in the NHS for 10 years, but I retained a working with children, young people practice. And so for the last, 13 years, I have been working on my own as a supervisor. And 8 years ago, 8.5 years ago, set up Talking Heads Supervision with one client and a absolute vision to try to change the world for children and young people and senior leaders in education.
That's lovely. It's really nice. Thanks, Lea. And today's podcast title or theme is a really interesting one. So, safeguarding the safeguarders is a part of that title and theme. So, safeguarding the safeguarders,
Yeah.
but it's the ethical accountability and moral purpose behind that. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've chosen to listen to this podcast, and the formal title of that podcast you've chosen to join in today is Ethical Accountability and Moral Purpose, Safeguarding the Safeguarders. And actually, a shout out to Lea, because it was Lea that came up with this fabulous title. So, kudos, Lea. That's great stuff. Just to set the scene a little bit about Talking Heads, and I know at the end of the podcast, we'll talk a little bit about typically how you help and support multi-academy trusts and school leaders. But again, just for the purposes of scene setting, just give us a high-level overview of Talking Heads, please.
So we provide regular long-term supervision, at least 9 sessions per academic year to senior leaders in education. And then we would work with a whole school setting, but we always begin there. And the reasons for that are twofold. A, the people in that role need a confidential space to be able to reflect, pause, think, feel about who they are and how they are at work. But also in all of my kind of 26, 30 years worth of experience, I absolutely know that for supervision to be successful in a setting, actually the senior leaders need to understand it to see the
Yeah,
benefits of it. So it's got a double pronged kind of hope behind working in that way. That we're
interesting.
not. Sorry.
Yeah. So just kind of an example. So without naming any names, of course,
Of
but
course.
what does I know I was going to say what's a typical day. There is no such thing as a typical day is the answer, but what kinds of supervision, help, support to senior leaders does it look like that you offer, that you are doing as we talk? What kind of it does it look like?
Um, Supervision is what it is in terms of working with senior leaders rather than more maybe DSLs who are very much going to be bringing more around cases, which is where supervisions come over from in terms of mental health social work.
Mm,
At a senior leader level, it feels it's the same and yet it will feel different because they tend to have less direct contact with children. They are bringing much more that's strategic.
yeah,
So it's important to say that. But, over a day for our team of kind of 48 supervisors, we would ask them to not see more than 4 people, 5 people, 4 really. That is their work. It's kind of very intense, wholehearted work around sitting with another human being, and that is its own level of tiring. So that, that our work, which is quite hard sometimes initially in that beginning of a relationship, to explain to someone, our full diary is 4 hours of person contact, and then the rest of the time is all the work in between.
Yeah.
My days are a bit different to that, but
Mm.
I do absolutely still deliver those. So I do still supervise. I'm not just
Yeah.
kind of doing all the work around talking heads. I still retain a practice as well.
Yeah, great. And I think that dovetails really, really nicely into the first of two or three questions that I'd love to kind of go through and frame with you today. A question I always like to start with is the challenges, the difficulties, the hurdles, the roadblocks in some cases that multi-academy trust and schools have, or multi-academy trust leaders and school leaders as individuals have in regards to this particular topic. So can we just talk us through that? What are the typical challenges that schools and MATs have that you see, that you hear, that you experience, that you support with, that you've learned over all of these years? What does that look like, please?
In a way, it would probably be the subject of every podcast you have ever done or will do, and every headline that you ever read is what comes to supervision, because it's always bespoke to the person that shows up and their community, their school, their multi-academy trust, their system, their family life. It's, it meets you exactly where you are at. But I mean, broadly speaking, and because we have really flourished since 2018. So, of course, we worked during the pandemic and we have
Yeah,
grown so much since then. Exhaustion, the how to keep goingness, the job is too much,
yeah,
on every level of too much. Which connects to that sense of exhaustion. The dynamic then around what's happened as a result of COVID in terms of how children and young people are able to show up in schools, how parents are showing up at the school gate and that kind of relational dynamic that's happening there. Life happens to our senior leaders, working with bereavement, menopause, thinking around what it means to be a neurodivergent leader. It all shows up at supervision. And actually, a lot of what shows up is unrecognized, not understood, quite often trauma responses around the
mm,
exhaustion. That is showing up a lot at the
mm.
moment, which is why it's very important to be able to work with that when it happens in the room. But yeah, it all comes to supervision.
Interesting. And I guess there's a direct link to all of those challenges and frustrations and pains. It leads to, dare I say, the inevitable, which is consideration of leaving a school, leaving a multi-academy trust, whether that's to look and explore a different school, a different academy trust, possible retirement, early retirement, and then the education sphere losing that incredible talent, skill, knowledge, experience. I'm sure you hear that on a very regular basis.
Absolutely. And I guess in a way, one of two things happen. Either someone arrives at supervision in a place where it's almost too late, like the damage and the harm is done.
Mm,
They are too depleted, they are too exhausted, and it absolutely is kind of end game. Supervision has a real role to play there, I think, in terms of helping someone leave well. So,
mm,
when we're very exhausted, angry, feeling resentful, that tends to come out in ways that are really unhelpful to the
mm,
people, team, system around us. So helping those people leave well so that either they go to other jobs feeling
yeah.
like they have a proper sense of what it was that happened rather than feeling
Mm,
very distressed.
mm,
Or they go into their personal lives feeling happier and more content with their decision to leave. We
mm,
repeatedly help with that. But also conversely, and the kind of really hopeful part of this is that a lot of people who come to supervision with us, and we work with over 500 senior leaders now, say that this has been the turning point. It was the missing bit of the jigsaw. It's helped them once you get past the initial story, because it can take 4 or 5 sessions to kind of for it all to tumble out, but then you
Yeah.
really into the work because
Mm,
you've cleared that kind of backlog of never having been heard in a way
mm,
that really matters, never having
mm,
been met and listened to, and then something else happens, and that's when we really find, if we catch people then, that something magical and wonderful starts to happen, which is they're back in feeling resourced, connected, supported, like they can do their role. They know they've got
mm,
someone in their corner that they see regularly, and that is just it's just so powerful.
mm.
And
That's
also
interesting.
that bit around in terms of our title, that what is also happening there is the only way that that is ever possible is if the person feels that they are back to being able to find a way to lead from their own sense of ethical and moral accountability, because that I can't think of a time in 26 years or 20 years of supervising where I've ever sat with someone where it wasn't the case that ultimately what tipped them over the edge was a distress around the organisation that they
Mm,
were, that there was no longer a fit for them and it wasn't okay. And the pain that's usually
mm.
there is a mismatch of values.
Thank you very much indeed. Very interesting. Moving to our next question and theme, Lisa, if I may, is what are, how can I frame this? What are schools, multi-academy trusts, and again, from the people perspective, the school leaders and multi-academy trust leaders, what are they trying to do, be cognizant of? What are they trying to do, achieve, support themselves, support others? What are they trying to do internally within a school or a MAT? Whether a tiny, tiny little rural school where I live in Norfolk, or whether a humongous secondary school or college in London. What are they trying to do themselves to support themselves and their colleagues in this area to try and manage these, what quite frankly sound unmanageable? What they're trying to do?
I mean, there are so many settings that we work with um, that already are so thoughtful about. I mean, the more kind of external support things in terms of employee assistance programs, etc., etc. But so often it comes down to the things you're kind of hinting at, really, in terms of culture that make a difference.
Mm,
So leaders paying attention to when they do or don't have meetings, whether or not they support their team to be able to go to their children's Christmas shows, the things that make an absolute difference. But again, that comes from an authenticity and a confidence in the leader about those kinds of things mattering. And if you work in that kind of setting, then the joy in those additional well-being yoga sessions are more likely to be really valued.
yeah.
Settings where those things are put in place, but there is not the kind of human connection element that I just was kind of referencing. That's when
Mm,
those things, and you see people very cross about those kind of initiatives. So it definitely comes back to whether or not the leaders are well enough resourced to know their team, to
mm,
know what is mattering to them as the weeks and days go past, that they notice how their team are. But you can only do that if someone's noticing how you are. And that's that
yes.
circle of support that are just
Yeah.
passionate is really necessary and needs to be put in place
Yeah.
more.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, to self-recognize
Mm-hmm.
is hard enough.
Yep.
To recognize that in yourself and colleagues um, is very, very difficult. And I guess what's in my mind listening to you is once they or should they identify it, it's well, what do they do about it? What can they do about it? Are they comfortable having a conversation? What is the, I wouldn't say remedy, but what is the support? What does it look like? Does that leader feel comfortable in supporting that colleague or colleagues? But as you said, it starts with themselves. If they can't self-recognize, so to speak, and be cognizant that help and support is required, it would be very, very difficult, wouldn't it? And I think another behavior that's in my mind listening to you is that type of leader that does recognize but buries their head in the sand and doesn't seek support and help. Is that something again that you have come across and do come across?
Oh, absolutely. The more that we start to hear in the session, the more, the more that we get to know our supervisees, you start to pick up, you know whether or not they're the kind of person that's out in the corridor doing the meet and greet in the morning. You know what kind of a leader they are. And then over time, of course, if you start to hear that actually they're in their office, they're starting to not want to be visible, they're not going out. Those are
Yeah.
immediate signs, and the benefit of the longevity of our relationship, that we can help them kind of go gently, because actually you feel very vulnerable in this place. But what is going on here? You need to be out, you need to be seen. But it is actually it's a repeat theme across
Mm,
supervision. When you're distressed, you don't want to be seen. I mean, that's
yeah.
just a human thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't realize you're doing it, but again, we can kind of pick that up. And I guess we're in a very privileged position as
Mhm.
supervisors to be able to highlight relationally and humanly, kindly, but clearly, actually it is an impactful thing to remain invisible as a leader. It's not going to
Mm,
be okay.
Interesting. Thank you. And for school and mat leaders listening to this podcast, I'm sure you're finding it incredibly interesting and educational as I am. But if you are resonating with this yourself and you're thinking, this sounds like me, or you're thinking, I have a colleague or colleagues who are demonstrating, let's say, these behaviors, signs, signals, then Lisa's going to take a few moments now to explain how Lisa and her organization can potentially help you and your colleagues. Lisa, if you would, how would a school or mat leader connect with you, reach out if they would like to have a chat on the back of this, pick up where we will leave off today, general support? What would the starting point be, Lisa, please?
Absolutely, Matt. We are. I mean, I set out from day one to be and always remain an extremely human based social enterprise, because what we do is entirely relational. So people wanting to connect post this conversation, I'd be absolutely delighted. There is our website, Talking Heads Supervision. We would probably come straight up. I'm on LinkedIn, have a professional page, my personal page. We're on Instagram. I have these conversations that are exploratory all the time. I'd actually
Mm,
say, like, a key part of my work at Talking Heads, apart from delivery and supporting my own team, is in having these conversations. I had an email today from someone who's, joined a multi-academy trust but been told he can't have his supervision anymore.
mm,
And my very genuine offer is, what can we do to help? Because, the NAHT called for more supervision last week, not less. He's been
yeah,
having supervision. He knows he found it incredibly useful. He's really distraught to have that taken away from him. So we're very keen on being as helpful as we can be. We spend a lot of time with individuals, organisations, in how we set supervision up, because how the relationship begins and organisations trusting us to safeguard the safeguarders is
yes,
really important. Because fundamentally, if there is an issue and we hear something, we will address it.
yeah,
And people can forget that with the kind of well-being things that go around it, but actually we do exist to ultimately safeguard children and young people.
yeah.
So yeah, we are absolutely open to any connections that anyone wants to make.
Thank you, Lisa. And just remind me one more time, your website address, please. I know Talking Head Supervision, straight into a search engine and straight
Yeah,
away you'll be there. But just your website one more time, please.
is www.talkingheadsupervision.co.uk.
Super.
We also provide training, Matt. That is something new that we are offering. So if there are senior leaders out there who want to think long term about embedding supervision into their organisation, we have just launched a 3-day training which will support you in becoming a supervisor internally, so that there is a more sustainable move
Yeah,
towards good quality supervision. You still need to be
that
an
sounds
expert.
like a great model. Sounds like a great model. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super. And your phone number, please, Lisa, should anyone prefer to give you a quick call or perhaps a quick
Yeah.
text? Hey, Lisa, listen to the podcast, got a few questions, love to learn more. What's your number, please?
It's 07912 224 213.
Super. Thank you very much. Listeners, watchers, thank you very much indeed for dialing into this podcast. We hope you found it as interesting as I have. Very, very inspiring as well, Lisa, for the work that you do. So thank you on behalf of everybody for the help and support that you give all educators that you work with. And ladies and gentlemen, listening to this, we strongly recommend Lisa and her organization. If there is any help and support that Lisa can give you, please get in touch. Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please keep your suggestions of areas, themes that you would like us to consider, and I'm sure we can get that arranged for you. Thank you very much, Lisa. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you today in the podcast.
Thanks, Matt. You too.